Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. Tonight I'm going to do a little tribute to Phil Lesh, legendary bass player of the Grateful Dead, who passed away Friday at the age of 84. He was the bass player for the Dead, their whole history. Of course, the band started in 1965 and officially ended as the Grateful Dead in 1995 when Jerry Garcia passed away. I'm going to talk about Phil Lesh, and I'm going to talk about my history with the Grateful Dead, when I got into them, what my first Grateful Dead albums were, when I got them, and talk about their uniqueness as well. So, of course, after Jerry Garcia passed away in 1995, the band, or certain band members, they continued in various offshoots of the Grateful Dead, starting with the other ones, who actually have an album by them. This is a live one. That was a lineup of the Grateful Dead. That was from like 1998 to 2002, and they only released a live record. But that was just the beginning. They've been going ever since. Then they called themselves the Dead, and that was from 2003 to 2009. Then they called themselves Further, from 2009 to 2014. And then they did that huge finale, which was like the 3 or 5 biggest concerts of all time at that time. And that was when they did fairly well. And that was, they brought in, of course, Trey Anastasio from Fish to do the Jerry Garcia part. And they did those 5 massive concerts, stadium shows, filmed it, released live records from it, and that was going to be it. No more Grateful Dead. Of course, that didn't really happen. That's where Phil Lesh left the bus, so to speak. But, Mickey Hart, Bill Kreutzmann, Bob Weir continued as Dead and Company and are continuing to this day, and bigger than ever, really, as a live act. It's just amazing. They did replace Phil Lesh with Oteil Burbridge, and they brought in John Mayer as the Jerry Garcia role, basically. And that's where they are to this day. Phil Lesh continued on his own, on and off, as he had been doing, as Phil Lesh and Friends. So I kind of respected that he stepped off the bus, which is what they were all going to do after fairly well. But Phil had been dealing with a lot of health issues over the years. They kind of sneaked out every once in a while, but he kept a relatively low profile with it. He had a liver transplant in 1998. Then, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2006. He had surgery, and supposedly it went well. And then in 2015, he actually announced that he had bladder cancer. Then he passed away Friday. They have not issued an official cause of death, but obviously he was not in great shape, unfortunately. He was a wonderful bass player, really unique, perfect for the Grateful Dead. Their musical requirements, almost jazzy-like, really big part of their sound. He was playing in that melodic bass style that you would see like Jack Cassidy with Jefferson Airplane, Hot Tuna, even like Jack Bruce with Cream, and all those legendary British bass players, starting with like McCartney, and you could even go down to like Chris Squire from Yes, and John Entwistle, of course, from The Who, and even some latter-day one, John Camp from Renaissance, maybe even Greg Lake, and even somebody like Martin Turner from Wishbone Ash. These guys are bass players. They don't just hold it down. They're very melodic. They're almost like guitar players. They're not holding down, just playing the root. They're adding to the melodies and the sounds and weaving and just adding so much. And they're crucial elements of the sound. And Phil Lesh was totally like that with the Grateful Dead. Absolutely. He did not write a lot of songs with the Grateful Dead, but he did sing wonderful harmony vocals. He had that high voice that you could hear when they did their harmonies. But funnily enough, he wrote my favorite Grateful Dead and sang my favorite Grateful Dead song of all time, which is Box of Rain, which is, of course, the opening track of American Beauty. We're going to talk about that. So he didn't write a lot. He also did Broken Chain from Mars Hotel, but maybe a couple of other ones. But Box of Rain, to me, is just unbelievable. How did I get into the Grateful Dead? Well, again, my sister's 4 years older, and she was a bit of a Deadhead. She had American Beauty, which I used to listen to, and I really loved it. She had another one, which was a cutout on vinyl, which was Steal Your Face. which was always as a double live record, and that's always been considered like the worst Grateful Dead album of all time, their worst live album. And I loved it when she had it on vinyl, although it sounded lousy. It was very thin. When I eventually got this version on Rhino, I thought it sounded much better. I always liked this album because it doesn't have all of that jamming. It sounds really strange to say that I preferred a tighter set, but it was nice to hear the Grateful Dead tight and just doing live songs without everything going off on tangents sometimes. I think she had Working Man's Dead as well. Those were the three that I grew up listening to young, but I personally got into the Grateful Dead. Thank you, Columbia House Record Club. I'll never forget it to the day I die. The first shipment I got from Columbia House, you got like 10 albums for a penny or something like that. And I ordered, it was in 1977, I was 14, and I ordered the brand new Grateful Dead album at that time, which was Terrapin Station on vinyl. And I just loved it. I especially loved side 2, which was that progressive whole side song, Terrapin Station. But I just loved the whole album, Estimated Profit. And it was a really golden time for the Dead. They were doing a lot of touring. I was only 14, so I wasn't seeing them. But man, I just love Terrapin Station. It was actually my number 3 favorite album of the year back in 1977. And that set me on the path because I had American Beauty and Steal Your Face from My Sister, Working Man's Dead on. Those were, copies, but Terrapin Station, my first one. I am a significant fan of the Grateful Dead. First time I saw them, actually, and I'll show you in my concert book here. And the first time I saw them was at the Nassau Coliseum, which was like a home away from home for the Grateful Dead. Where is it? There it is. I saw them January 10th, 1979 at the Nassau Coliseum. And there is the original newspaper ad and the ticket stub and the review from Wayne Robbins, who was a legendary writer for Newsday newspaper. Saw Neil Young right before that, a couple of months before that. So there's the Grateful Dead. Tickets were a whopping $9.50 at the Nassau Coliseum. I remember I liked it. I didn't think it was like, as amazing as everybody was kind of saying it would be, but I think with the Grateful Dead, maybe you had to be under certain additives, which I was only 16, so I wasn't quite there. But the reviews were kind of mediocre. Here, song finished with a weird scenario, 15,000 people singing Tennessee Jet, a place that, no place I'd rather be, about Tennessee. El Paso, one of the country music's historic low points, was a version of Stagger Lee, an insult to the most durable of Soul City myths. Not a great review there. The Dead found its groove with Passenger, which is from Terrapin Station, and its second set, Sewed White, continues to attract the following after 2 decades. It did Need a Miracle. Shakedown Street had Jerry Garcia, Finding His Groove. That's what the Dead are all about, wavelengths rather than songs. What they and the audience get out of sync. It's as cacophonous as two distant radio stations fighting for the same frequency on a static-filled night. Yeah, I got that. When you are relatively straight and you saw the Grateful Dead, sometimes you're missing out. But when they connect us on Shakedown Street and later Not Fade Away, it's a connection of metaphysical clarity. It is for those peak moments that the Deadheads keep coming back. So that was part of the review. And definitely, I kind of agree with that to a certain extent. As of today, I currently have 55 Grateful Dead albums, not including the solo records, which I have most of those. I have all their studio albums. They were all remastered by Rhino in these boxes, but I have other versions as well. And I got a ton of their live records. But in fact, do you know that the Grateful Dead have the most top 40 albums of all time on Billboard album charts? And that's because they just constantly release these archive live releases that, sell enough to get them in the top 40, which is interesting. So I'm a big fan, actually, of their studio records, too, which most people are not. But Rhino did an amazing job on remastering them. They sound much better than they did on their original vinyl, I think so. and they got bonus tracks and stuff like that. So you could really spend a lifetime investigating the Grateful Dead. It just keeps pumping out unbelievable amounts of live stuff. I remember my sister was a bit of a Deadhead in a way. I remember she went to Englishtown, that festival out at the Raceway in New Jersey, and that's one of those Dick's Picks. I have a lot of Dick's Picks releases, but my sister was at that show. Again, I was only 77. I was 14, so it wasn't like I was going there, that's for sure. But again, I got Terrapin Station. What else did I get at that time? So, like I said, I had American Beauty, Stevie Face, Workingman's Dead, Terrapin Station, the first one I bought. And everybody at that time had Skeletons from the Closet on vinyl. That was like their first greatest hits, best of kind of a thing. And, for vinyl days, that was pretty cool. I thought I was really cool when I picked up their double best of, which had a lot deeper stuff than Skeletons in the Closet. That was this guy, and that is called What a Long Strange Trip It's Been, the Best of the Grateful Dead. Maybe you remember that. That's a double CD and a double vinyl. I got that around that time as well. And then when they were releasing their albums, I would pick them up. Shakedown Street, I remember a lot of people trashed it, Disco Grateful Dead, but I loved it, man. I thought it was great. And, Fire in the Mountain, They Did a Miracle. I remember when they were on Saturday Night Live and they were performing that. I thought it was great. So I'm definitely a fan of that kind of stuff. And I definitely remember, and I was not at the shows, when they played Radio City Music Hall and they released 2 double live records. They did Reckoning, which was the acoustic live one, and there's great versions of it in there because they released a whole slew of other tracks, bonus tracks, and this was Dead Set, which was the electric portion from those concerts. These are great live albums. These are amongst 2 of my favorite Grateful Dead albums to this day. But they're better from the box set with the bonus stuff. So, I totally love these. These are great ones. Then I got those when they came out. I did not see those shows. So, unfortunately, I fell in love with a lot of their classic live records, Europe 72, and then there was the second version of Europe 72. This is a great collection. And, as you probably know the Dead, those live records were almost like, not studio records, but their live albums would have unreleased tracks. So those were the places to get them. And I even enjoyed, Go to Heaven to a certain extent. Alabama Getaway, Far From Me, Althea, Feel Like a Stranger, Don't Ease Me In. I thought these were pretty good records. A lot of people hate them. And, of course, In the Dark was their really big hit with Touch of Grey, and they actually had a big hit, album and a big hit single. But they're good records. I don't fault them for being popular. So, and then, like I said, to this day, they're releasing umpteen live records. I don't pick them all up, but the really cool ones, the 77 tour is real special for me because I was a big fan of Terrapin Station, so here's one of those. And then the Egypt show at the Pyramids in 1978 with a DVD, not one of their best performances, but certainly a really cool show to have. So, I got tons of Grateful Dead, and, I'm definitely a fan. I would never consider myself a Deadhead, but I'm definitely a fan of their music. To me, a Deadhead is more like a lifestyle. I don't have that lifestyle with the Dead, I didn't travel to see them. I wasn't going to sleep out in a VW bus, and I certainly didn't have the hair to twirl and swirl for 30-minute versions of Dark Star. I would have been like, come on, move on to the next song probably. But I do love the music of the Grateful Dead, as you can clearly see, and this is only a tiny portion of Grateful Dead stuff that I have. I got DVDs, and I remember seeing the Grateful Dead movie at the Mini Cinema in Uniondale, New York, and a midnight movie, and that thing was like a 3-hour movie, so I stayed up for that with the cool animation. So, definitely a big fan of the Grateful Dead. Wouldn't say I'm a Deadhead, but I love them. Anyway, I hope that Phil Lesh is at peace. I hope he's up there jamming with Jerry Garcia and Pigpen and all their umpteen keyboardists that passed away. I used to say that's one of the most dangerous spots in rock and roll. Being a keyboard player for the Grateful Dead often did not lead to great things. health-wise. So hope he's up there, Phil Lesh, jamming with these people. And as for me, I'm going to go put on American Beauty. And it starts off with Phil's Perfect Box of Rain. And going to enjoy their wondrous music, and I hope you do too. So there's my tribute to Phil Lesh and the Grateful Dead. And let me know your thoughts of the Grateful Dead and Phil Lesh. And as always, thanks for watching the Alan Rosenberg Show. I'll see you next time. See you around.